Lesson 4.4, Simplifying Fractions. So it is a kind of a standard policy anytime you're dealing with fractions in problems, now and in your future of any kind of math problems, you never leave a fraction unsimplified. You must simplify the fraction to lowest terms, which means that you can't have any common thing that any common factor in the numerator with a common factor in the denominator. You need to cancel those out so that they have no greatest common factor other than 1. So fractions that have the same value are called equivalent fractions. A fraction in simplest form is when it has the greatest common factor, GCF, for the numerator and denominator is 1. It's an equivalent fraction because it would actually have the same value if you simplified it out or divided it out and changed it to a decimal. So it looks like they recommend 2 ways to simplify fractions. One, if you look at example 1, it says write 36/54 in simplest form. And it says first find the GCF of the numerator denominator. So what they literally do is list every factor of 36, every factor of 54, and then they start working backwards and trying to find the biggest factor they have in common. So I would definitely start here with 36 because it's not going to be any bigger than that. 36 is not in the list for factors of 54. So then you would go to 18, and 18 is in the list of 54. So 18 is the greatest common factor of 36 and 54. If you divide both of them by 18, the numerator of 36 and denominator 54, divide them both by 18, you would get 2/3. So 36/54 is in simplest form when it's written as 2/3. So that is one way to simplify. Okay? Here's another way. 8/12. So they look at the factors as a prime factorization, and they look and see what they have in common with the prime factorization. And it looks like with the prime factorization they have the 2 sets of 2's in common, making the greatest common factor 4. So they divide both 8 and 12 by 4 and get 2/3. Well, I'm going to propose that there's actually another way. And I feel like this way is more widely used and more practical for you to deal with. So let's try this other way. So you can do either of the ones listed in example 1 or example 2, or you can just try this. So number 1. 42/72. If you know the greatest common factor, it's great to start dividing out the greatest number that they have in common. But let's say you don't know. If I see 42 and 72, I know they're both even. So what number do I know for sure goes in both of them? 2. So I'm thinking 2's are pretty easy to take out of there, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So if I divide both top and bottom by 2, let's see what happens. What's 42 divided by 2? 42 divided by 2 is 21. What about 72 divided by 2? What's half of 72?
36.
What is it? 36. Now, the problem is, if you do this way, chances are you're not going to be done yet. So I've got 21 over 36. They're not both even, so I can't take out another 2. Do you know any other thing that would go into 21 and 36, Michael?
3.
Let's try 3. Let's try dividing both of them by 3. What's 21 divided by 3? 7. Michael, what's 36 divided by 3?
12.
12. 7/12. Now, 7. Tell me what you know about 7. It's odd. It's a number. What else? Can't divide it by anything other than 1 and 7. So, does 7 go into 12? No. So, since 7 is, what's that word we learned yesterday or we talked about yesterday? Began with the P?
Prime.
Prime. 7's prime. 7 doesn't go into 12. 7/12 would be your simplest form. 7/12 is equivalent to 42 over 72. All right, let's look at number 3, 21 and 35. Are there any common factors for 21 and 35? Michael?
3 and 7. Yeah, 3 and 7.
Just 7. Yeah. I think both of these can be divided by 7. So what is 21 divided by 7? 3. What's 35 divided by 7? Tell me about 3 and 5. Can't divide them. They're both prime. It's simplest form. 21 over 35 is equivalent to, it's an equivalent fraction with 3/5. Okay, let's do, this one's tougher, so we're going to do this one. 99 and 132. 99 and 132. Any ideas? Any ideas of what can go in 99 and 132? Kyler? 11. Wow. Let's check that out. Let's see if they're both divisible by 11. Well, I'm pretty sure 99 is pretty good because 99 divided by 11 is what? 9. What about that 132? How many times does 11 go? We might need to do this over to the side, right? How many times does 11 go into 132? Michael?
12.
Let's see. That would be 11, 2, 22 comes down. Yep, you're right. 12. So 9/12. Now, is that in simplest form, 9/12?
No.
No. Because what can I do with that yet?
By 3.
Divide them both by 3.
Equal.
9 divided by 3 is how much? 3. And 12 divided by 3?
4.
Okay, tell me about 3 and 4.
Even and odd.
One's even, one's odd. You got that right. Anything else? One's prime, 3's prime. And 3 doesn't go into 4.
Simplest
So that's in simplest form. 3/4 is simplest form. Any questions? So what you need to do is to find the common factors and divide them out until you get to a fraction that's as reduced as far as it can go. Some of the clues would be if one of the numbers is prime and it doesn't go into the other one. If they have no common factors other than 1 is what you're going for.